I'll start by answering a question that was brought up earlier about standing desks and posture. Yeah, shall we? So the reason why I switched to a standing desk is for some obvious ones. One of them being, sitting down all the time. Oh, by the way, can you guys hear me before I actually get into make sure that everything's working?
Yeah, I can hear
I'm sorry. Sorry you can hear
you.
me. Yeah, I can. Um,
No, it's just my demeanor, man. You're cool. You're good.
no, just joking with you. I'm overtly sarcastic, as you can probably tell. I you know what? I want to go with a darker piece. So, for obvious reasons, like I mentioned earlier, because when you're sitting down all the time, it's obviously not good for your posture because your spine is mostly built to be in a upright position. And sitting is obviously fine. Sitting and laying around is an okay thing to do, but in moderation. It's in fact, if you can stand too much, or if you stand too much, it's also detrimental, right? So it's important to kind of have a moment where you take breaks and sit down or relax or just chill. But that's kind of the point, right? Like people nowadays, especially in our industry, take breaks by standing up. It's backwards, it seems like. Instead of taking breaks by, um, taking a break, like relaxing. And that's kind of the kind of the crux of what I'm trying to get at. And so when I switched to a standing desk, that was kind of the main purpose. But I found after doing that, I was a little more alert as well. Like my mind was a little bit more on. And then also it was just nice to be able to just get up and just go. Like if I was already up, so I just like would walk somewhere, you know? And you have more circulation that's running through your body a little bit more, actively versus passively. Because when you're just chilling there, your blood goes slower and your heart rate is slowed. Everything starts to slow down a bit. And when you're standing, it increases. And when you get blood flow, you mean to get stuff going to your brain. Make sense?
Yeah,
So
yeah, that
it's,
actually makes
yeah, so it's just overall just great for you. Okay. Obviously not in, if you stand too much, it's also pretty bad. But if you stand too little, which is the most common problem that most people face, then it's actually even worse, right? And so that's kind of the major things. And as an artist, one of our greatest tools is our mind, right? We use our mind often while we're painting and drawing. And so anything you could do to fuel your mind, you should do. You should encourage more activity in driving that into your life, into your lifestyle. So for instance, I've also switched my diet, right? I exercise, as most of you guys might have figured, but I also eat primarily, um, or basically exclusively just plant-based foods, okay? There's a term for what I am, which is a vegan, right? But I don't like to call myself that for the political purposes of it. Because, whenever you hear vegan, you think of like this a hippie or some sort of animal activist, this extreme animal activist, right? Uh, and although that's obviously not true, there's a lot of vegans that are just that do it for health reasons, less for the animals, right?
sense.
But also even the ones that do it for the animals, there are great examples of them that are reasonable people and understand that people aren't intentionally trying to destroy the planet or kill animals, right? It's just force of habits, if that makes sense. But anyway, I don't want to get too political. I want to just make a statement about health. And so I switched my diet, and that also helps because, again, for the same reason, right? You want to get good circulation. You want to have a good heart and a good functioning brain. So if you look into it, the brain works really well when it's not basically if it's getting one of its number one food sources, which is carbohydrates. The brain loves carbs. And I don't mean like just bread or anything like that. I mean like, fruits and vegetables. Understand?
Hmm.
And it breaks that apart much easier, and it turns that stuff into glucose, the kind of stuff that we use for our muscles, the things that we use to have energy throughout the day, and more importantly, it's literally food for the brain. And our brain takes about 20%, I believe, of the food that we take in a day just for itself, as it should, because for one, it keeps us awake and keeps us alert, but also helps manage functional attributes of our body, like, help control metabolism and these types of things, right? Well, this whole we only use 10% of our brain. That's not entirely accurate, because our brain is doing other stuff other than just focusing on conscious thought, right? And so our brain is also paying attention to things that we're not even paying attention to create good habits, forms, or good formed habits or good states of mind, right? And so it's important to fuel that brain. And so physical activity helps, because it engages your brain to not only cognitively be paying attention to how to, like, your regulation of your heart, your sweat, and your energy consumption, but also, it's getting a good flow of oxygen and nutrients as your blood is pumping more regularly through your body, right? So it's just good overall to be active and then be eating a healthier diet for your brain, and it makes it easier to remember things. It makes it easier to stay focused, all stuff. Because if you fill your body with like just terrible stuff, then you basically have given your brain less fuel to work with, and also has to do some damage control with the stuff that you have given it. For instance, have you guys ever had those days where you ate like a lot of like Korean barbecue, and then you don't feel like moving for like the whole day?
Oh
That
yeah, I
that's
got a story.
Yeah, that's your brain and body's basically saying, "What have you done? Now we have to spend the whole day digesting this nonsense." You understand? And so that's what that is. And once you switch your diet to primarily a plant-based one, which means, and I say primarily meaning, like, I don't mind if people eat meat. I'm not that crazy, or eat animal products in general. But I do encourage people to try to have a majority of the food that they eat mostly from plants, because that will regulate their body at a much better rate, right? And we're really built for it. If you really look at our physiology, we're truly built to eat more plants than we are to eat animals, almost at every level. And so, in fact, this whole idea of eating animal products is an idea that came from kings and queens. Like, kings and queens and princes and princesses and noblemen were the only kinds of people that have access to this type of stuff. But as the world becomes more wealthier, and as or more and more people have access to greater common goods and have access to better technologies, for instance, something like as simple as refrigeration, okay, then you get more access to a lot of stuff, including things that are not very good for you. Like, and this is including processed foods like potato chips, which, by the way, are vegan, but they're awful for you. Okay, and like Coke is also vegan, but it's awful for you. So it's not like if you only have a vegan-based diet. Like, there's like a what you call it, processed meat food, like fake meats, right? A lot of them are actually tremendously terrible for you, even worse than the real thing. So it's actually better to stay away from them. Okay, but no one will generally argue that like broccoli or an orange or an apple or a potato or rice or corn or um, like whole foods. No one really can dispute those are generally great for you. And so, yeah, once I switched my diet to that, I actually feel a lot better. I have more energy in my life, and I just feel pretty much I don't feel tired until I want to go to sleep.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so and whenever I'm done eating, I don't feel like I need to lay down. That doesn't happen anymore. Used to happen all the time. In fact, me and my friends used to go to Korean barbecue for lunch, like almost exclusively every lunch. And we started switching our habit because we would find that we get super lethargic afterwards. So what we would do is we would still go because we loved it and it's delicious. But what we would do is we would just like eat mostly the side dishes. We would get like one or two plates of like brisket and then just focus on eating mostly the side dishes. And the side dishes are primarily like seaweed or kimchi or like potato salad or stuff like this. And then we found out that we had more energy after lunch, and we started doing that so that we can have both our Korean barbecue and also not be so extremely tired. But like I said, once you've changed your lifestyle habits from eating a little bit better, working out, try to stand more than sitting, you'll find a huge change in energy levels, and you'll also find a huge change in cognitive activity, meaning that your brain will be a little bit more, your brain will be like, hey, what do you want to learn today? Let's do it. Let's figure this out, you know? Because again, you've taken a lot of things off its plate. You've given it its natural and most abundant resource constantly, you know, and you're giving it, you're training it by letting it constantly get flow of oxygen and nutrients when you exercise and be physical. So it's really important. And if you feel like this is like, man, that's a lot of stuff to do, it really isn't. For instance, working out, like I said, you only really need to put like a good 30 to 40 minutes, maybe an hour a day, and you can split that up throughout the day easily. And if you stand up, that adds a lot of ability to work out while you're just, or like having calories burned and energy worked as you are standing, you know. And then another thing that happens another easy transition with the food stuff is just to start learning how to cook things one at a time. Like, don't try to learn everything, and don't try to change every little habit of yours, because it's really unsustainable. But if you just say, I'm going to learn how to cook a dish like once a week, that's totally sustainable. And that's pretty much what I do right now. I do that actually every week or so. I'll learn a new recipe and I'll try to cook it. And I'm up to like 5 or 6 now, and I can like consecutively cook for myself. And find like easy solutions. For instance, I have a really easy solution for food. I just make rice, beans, and then I just rice, beans, and corn or steamed broccoli. It's really easy. Put some salt on that. You can get barbecue sauce, put on the beans, make barbecue beans, and then bam, you got like a delicious, and it's fine. It's a very simple meal, and it's very cheap, and anyone can do it. And it's one of my favorites now. It's like pretty much my go-to. It's so simple.
Did you say corn?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought there was something that like came out a while ago that pretty much said like corn doesn't actually, it's not easily digestible for people.
That's not entirely true, man.
Uh-huh. I have to look
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah. And I would say that you're not entirely wrong to suspect that. It's the way you prepare it. For instance, like beans straight out of the, you know, like out of the bag are like, you have to cook them, right? They're like hard. They're really
Hmm.
rough. And same thing with like potato, right? But once
Right.
you cook it, it becomes more easily digested. So you're not entirely wrong. So I guess my point is that you need to think about whether it's prepared or how it's prepared, right? So for instance, like if you just get like, just genuine good old popcorn, it's like the kernels, you
Yeah.
just pop them. Like that's super easy to digest and eat and cook, you know? And it's fine as long as you don't put any butter or oil or anything on it. Just eat it raw, and it's just basically straight up corn. There's nothing to it.
Have you found like any negative drawbacks to changing your diet?
No, not really. Yeah, nothing at all. There's a lot of fear people have, right? They're like, oh my gosh, you're gonna be deficient in things. No, it doesn't really occur. There's actually a few things you can be deficient in, but the things that you are or will be deficient in are the same things that people are already deficient in.
Right.
And so it's not like exclusive to people who eat mostly primarily plants, right? It's a good point to make out. So I usually do like a multivitamin just to make sure that make sure I hit the top of that uh, spectrum, make sure I didn't miss any of the stuff that I might have didn't get one day, you know, and it works out fine. And multivitamins are cheap, and you can get a lot of them. But that's pretty much it. It's not, other than that, it's not too complicated. There's some, like if you ever go complete, like you should look into all the specific things you might need to get. That's all I did. I just researched and looked into it. There's some stuff, like I said, you used to stay away from, guys. Like for instance, there's like apparently like things like soy is pretty aggressive. So I've started avoiding that. But I won't get too much into it. But my main point to you guys is that, you know, it helps. It makes you a little bit more active. It makes you more cognitive. It makes you better overall. And so you should really consider making some lifestyle changes, especially if you plan to live a little bit longer. Don't worry, like a lot of this is like accessible online. You can find tons and tons of information. Don't just listen to one person, listen to many. Right? There's like some enthusiasts that are like, you can only eat one thing. And it's like, oh, that sounds reasonable. But then I do more research and I'm like, oh, that doesn't actually know anymore. The more I read into it, right? And so it's important to kind of do your own expansive research because especially it's for your guys' own safety and for your own health. But for myself, yeah, I use several different apps. There's one app that's called Chronometer, and I used that for several weeks. And what that does is basically you put in everything that you've eaten in a day, and it tells you what you're missing or what you're getting, not getting enough of. Out of all the foods and stuff you put in there, it has a good sense of the nutrients that you're getting or missing. And that's something you should just do even with whatever diets you guys have currently.
AJ, this is also, I guess, sort of related to health. I recently changed my sleep schedule, which has been
Oh yeah, great.
actually awesome because I was getting 8 hours, like what they recommend, but
Sure.
I was feeling like groggy during the day, so I think it was just too much for me. I know you wake up at like 4 in the morning, so I was wondering what your
Not
sleep
that
schedule is like.
early. I wake up like at the earliest like 7, perhaps 6:30. You know, so it's
All
not
right.
like 4. That's crazy. It's not crazy. Like people do it all the time, but it's like it's not necessarily what I do. And most of the reason why is because my kids get up usually that time, so I just kind of get up that time too. But like especially like when after my surgery, I will just wake up and be like right awake. You know,
Mm.
and a lot of times people don't, like people hit the snooze button and they just keep hitting the snooze button and they keep hitting it and they never wake up kind of situation. That never occurred to me, or never happened to me after the whole switching over and then started waking up. You know. And one of the things that I want to kind of make a point of is, yeah, you should change everything. You're right. There's something about sleep too, right? Like it's not necessarily about getting a exact amount. It's about just sleeping, and then when you wake up, you wake up. Right? Whenever you feel like it's time to wake up, you should just wake up. You know? That's something also to pay attention to. And yeah, like your sleep schedule in terms of like, you know, if you wake up in the morning and you feel really, really tired, um, you know, it might have a lot to do with the fact that you haven't slept enough during the night or you didn't sleep appropriately, you know, so you need to kind of set up circumstances to let you sleep better at night. So for instance, you know, a lot of people have phones and cell phone devices or something, some sort of digital device in front of their face right before they go to bed. That's actually advised against because some of these screens have like this blue light that simulates the sense of sunlight or daylight rather. And so your brain kind of gets this mixed message of like it's still kind of daytime outside. You know what I mean? And so when you try to go to sleep, it's harder to sleep because your brain's kind of like, I don't know though. I think we should be awake right now. You know? And so then you're just like, no, seriously, bro, trust me, it's time to sleep. And it's like, are you sure though? Like it feels like we were outside for like several hours. He's like, no, that was just me on YouTube. Are you sure though? Like it seems like we were doing stuff. So I have this app. It's called Twilight. And what it does is basically gets rid of that blue, like it basically turns your phone red. And people sometimes when they see it, they're like, what the hell is wrong with your phone? And it only happens at night, right? Because I have it on a timer. So like right around 7 or 8 o'clock, it starts turning red. and then it goes red and red and it dims more and more and more, and to the point it's almost impossible to see unless it is pitch black in my room, you know? And it's helpful because it basically turned my cell phone into a book or something, because then I just read, right? And it's not like damaging light to send misleading signals to my brain. It's just like a kind of more subtle light, but this is like, it's fine, you know? And so that's something to consider too. Or you can just have the good habit of just not using any of your devices at that moment, at that time, you know, and just pick up a book or something, or do something more physical. And I don't mean like doing physical activity either, like running around, jumping, because that also can stunt your sleep. But I mean like just reading a book, or like instead of playing a video game, playing some board games, right, with some of your friends or family. And instead of like, you know, checking your Facebook or anything like that, why don't you just like watch a regular TV show on the actual TV screen, you know? But even that is something you should avoid if you can, but it's better than just having a straight up screen like 2 inches away from your face, right? And so, or like at least a foot away from your face, right? I don't think 2 inches, and I don't think anyone puts their phone 2 inches. I'm doing it right now. I'm like, what the? Actually, you know, I do know people that do that. They put their phone like right up in their nose. And now I can think of 2 people that do that. It's so funny. Yeah, don't do that, right? It's going to keep you up at night. And so, yeah, it's anything and everything you can do to start adjusting, and do everything in moderation. Don't do everything like all at once, because it won't be sustainable. Moderation. Make it one change at a time and try to make it stick. And then once it sticks, move on to a different change. And then a year from now, you'll have a completely different lifestyle that's a little bit more conducive to your growth as an artist, but also to your health. So that way you can live longer and feel better.
Do you think that for like people who are, you know, trying to make it in the art, like kind of get into the industry, but we have to work like day jobs, or we have like school and classes and stuff like this that kind of force us out of like a preferable schedule? Do you think it's like a hard set rule, the stuff you're saying, like you can live by this stuff even when you have all those
Yeah,
other
you can totally do it.
demands?
It's just all it's about management, right? Like I've met people who truly did not have time in their lives for things, and they still found time. You get it? Like it's just
Yeah.
it's all moderation, and everything's temporary. Like if you know that you don't want to like work like a full-time job, like you want your art to be the full-time job, then you know
Mhm.
just look forward to that change. But don't expect it to happen, and just live with your circumstances. You know?
Right.
Like for instance, if you have a day job that doesn't have anything to do with art, but you sit at a desk all day, you could still get up every 15 to 20 minutes for like a minute or two and just stretch and then get back down, you know? Just set a
Right.
timer. Just set a timer for every hour or something and get up for 15 minutes and walk around and stretch, you know? If you like your sleep schedule is a thing that you can control. Like you can control when you go to sleep or how you go to sleep. You can control the quality of your sleep. These are types of things that you have somewhat of control. And if you don't, then definitely try to start changing your circumstances, because that's pretty rough. But I don't know too many people that have it that badly. Um, and that's because I live in a mostly sheltered environment. I'm very aware of that. For instance, most of you guys have internet, so most of you guys are doing all right. I don't imagine most of you living in the streets or dealing with poverty or dealing with famine, or hunger, because you have access to just internet. Not everybody in the world has access to internet. I believe it's less than half of the world's population has access to the internet. You have to understand that having access to my class is a luxury, okay? It is a luxury. And once you understand that, like even having access to my cheap, like $3, $5 video tutorials, that's a luxury, okay? Having access to YouTube, it's a luxury. You might not feel that way if you live in your studio apartment and you're like selling hot dogs or something at a store. But the fact that you have a job is a luxury, okay? The fact that you have a place to stay is a luxury. The fact that you have access to running water that can be heated, like the fact that it can be hot or cold, is a luxury. Okay? And if you take advantage of that luxury, you'll do fine. You'll succeed. But if you don't and you complain about it, about like why you don't have access to all this stuff, then spend a weekend in one of these like high populated countries that have no access to any of this stuff, and then your worldview will change almost immediately, right? But I think most of you guys are sensible and smart enough to know that without traveling and going to these places, right? And if not, I think most of you, again, I think you guys are wise enough to understand what I'm trying to get at. And so, like I said, I don't think anyone in this class has it that bad that they can't control these circumstances. Okay, that's all I'm trying to say. Okay, like you'll find a way. You'll figure it out. I was watching been watching a lot of political videos, and there was some guy complaining about like how he can't protest because he has too much homework, and I was just like, that's like what a first world problem to have, right? And even like the guy that like he asked the question, he was really sympathetic. He's like, I understand that you guys have a lot of work, and I apologize for contributing to that, because he's like a teacher. He's like, but trust me, you have more time than you know. And he's like, you can protest in different ways too. Don't just assume. Like that was just the most immediate cop out question, right? Like, but what about me? Like, I don't have access to this. Like, bro, like you're on a Facebook live stream about this political statement that this teacher is trying to make. You're doing it right now. You're literally, as you speak, doing a level of protesting. Like how did you find time to just sit in here on a 1 hour live stream? Like it's just the perspective is a little skewed sometimes with people. Okay. And so I'm not trying to say that you guys are at that level at all. You guys, like I said, are obviously more sensible than that. I'm just trying to remind you, that's all, that no matter how bad you think you have it, you don't have it as bad as you think.
For sure.
Yeah, and just that little bit of like perspective changes everything. You know what I mean? I'll tell you a story, and then I'll take another question, or I'll take a question, because this was like a question that you asked earlier, but or someone asked earlier about the health stuff, so I just wanted to answer it because I told you it was a good question to ask, and hopefully you guys understand the answers, how powerful the answer could be for you if you make changes. But there was an artist who lived on the streets. He was homeless, and one day he's the kind of homeless type of person where he got stabbed for bread. Like that's the kind of homeless person he was. Okay, and he one day was approached by a person who worked at a company for a video game company, and because he had really cool paintings that he was selling to make money. He was like a street artist. And the guy was like, this is actually really good. Like, we could use something like this. I would love to give you kind of an opportunity, right? And he was like, awesome, man. I would love that. So he takes the opportunity. He gets an art test. He kills the art test. The guy brings him in. And his first day in the job, he goes to one of the producers and says, is it possible that I can get my first check? Like, I know I've only just started working here, and can I get prorated for the month, my first 2 checks? And, the producer obviously was just kind of like, why? It's kind of a bizarre question to ask, right? And he answered with, well, I'm homeless. And the producer was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I'm like homeless. I'm drawing a robot, sweetheart. You like my robot? Oh, thank you, sweetie. So he's like, I'm homeless. Like, I just want to have enough money to find a place to stay for a little bit and get some food and take a shower. And the producer obviously reacted with compassion. He's just like, of course, we'll figure it out right away, And see, the thing was that the art director or the guy that hired him didn't know he was homeless. He thought he was just some kid like selling stuff on the streets. And, obviously the producers and nobody figured that out, right? They were all kind of like, what? Whoa. And now this artist is an art director at Ubisoft. This artist I'm referring to.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, my story is cool, but not as cool as his. My path to glory is pretty great, but there are people that I know personally who have much greater stories, and I know people who have it even a more privileged life, but nobody ever gets this stuff for free is what I'm trying to get at. For instance, let me give you the polar opposite, the most privileged story that I have. Where this kid, he goes to the art school, he gets, his parents pay for everything. He goes there. He's one of the best ones in his class. He gets an internship at Riot Games. Like after a year into school, he realized he it's not for him. Like there's more out there. So he makes his own path for himself, and he goes to Riot Games for internship. They love his stuff, but they don't think he's good enough just yet. But he realizes when he takes the job that his level of work is not nowhere near what he needs to be because the school he was going to was not providing it for him, right? And so he spends the whole next year basically focusing all his effort to get that internship again and then also get a job there somehow, if anything. He was willing to take another internship and then come back home and then work hard again and then do another internship. You know what I mean? Like he was prepared to just go the long haul because he saw the inside of the glory that is Riot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but like he went in the second year and they said, "Oh, I remember you. Man, you got really good in a short amount of time. You want a job?" And he's like, "Yes." And they gave him a job. So it still took him, most of his early life because he drew most of his life and the 2 years of persistence to get back to Riot again. So even his most privileged life, right? He didn't have to pay for college. He was already doing great artwork, he still had to work for it. Okay. There's nobody that just comes out of the gate like amazing. Like it's not like this guy was born being an amazing artist. He just happened to draw a lot. When he when a lot of people stopped drawing with paper and pencil when they were kids, he kept doing it. Like most of you guys.
Mm.
You understand? And then when he got a taste of what he could do, he accelerated that. So realize that you guys have a little bit more privilege than you think, okay? Even those of you that don't live in the States, you think, well, what about the jobs? The jobs are all in the States. No, they don't need to be. And the world is being more connected than they were before. So you can actually work from your own house, to be honest. All right? You can make that
Yeah.
happen. Like things are
If,
changing and changing in your benefit.
if you're on ArtStation, they actually have job postings all the time too.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it's just getting easier. Yeah. But I hear this complaint. Let me kind of rebuttal with a complaint, and I'm going to rebuttal than I rebuttal, which is, well, doesn't that mean that more people are going to be competition? And the answer is that's always true, always, forever. Okay?
yeah.
There's always that problem. And so I guess you just should give up then. No, of course not, right? Because it's not a matter of there's more competition. It's just a matter of when people have more access to technology and education and access to these great tools, they just have to bring a better set of skills that people don't expect. That's it. And then that's always been true. The guy that happened to spend $5,000 or bought like 5,000 horses the day the car was invented, I mean, it sucks. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm gonna buy. I just got this car. I got these horses, man. People are gonna want to transport themselves with horses. And then the car was invented, and he's like, it's fine. My horses are still gonna be in business. And then as people buy more and more cars, he's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. And then eventually, when people just drive cars primarily, he's like, I can't believe it. The industry's changed. How dare they? That's like always true. Always is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
For instance, like people are like, well, um, this whole photo bashing or 3D stuff. Like, do you think it's important still to do 2D? And I'm like, you're focused on the wrong thing. You should focus on fundamentals, foundation, because these things transcend the technology. You understand me? Like, I know 3D. I know how. I even do some VR stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's not because I'm like I need to be on the cutting edge. Because I have genuine curiosity for these tools, and they're really amazing. But I do well in a lot of these tools, not because I'm like this savant. It's because I have strong foundational knowledge, things that can transition. If I have to start doing everything in VR, so be it. I'll be able to transition to that. It makes me sad to see some of these like old, like legendary artists, like on my Facebook feed, complain all the time about all these new artists. And I'm like, don't you hear yourself? There are people that used to complain about you because you were a digital artist. And now you're that person, but now with these students or these people, Like, don't ever become that is what I'm trying to get at if you want to kind of be relevant throughout your whole career. And you can be relevant doing your old or your own kind of technique. Like, look at Kim Jong-ji. He basically primarily draws primarily in digital, or I'm sorry, traditional tools. Like, he just marker or brush pen, right? That's like his thing. And he gets paid tens of thousands of dollars to just do that because he's so good at it. So just be so good at whatever it is that you do. And that's another way to kind of stay relevant. Like, there's people who make toothpick sculptures. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, if you pay attention to the tools more than the techniques, then you're going to be left behind really quickly. The tools change so fast. And so, hopefully that answers your question. I even forgot kind of where we started with the question. But my point to all of you guys is that, like when it comes to technology and advancement in your skills, focus on foundational stuff, things that you can take with you. If someone were to come and chop off my right arm right now, for whatever reason, I'll still be able to draw and color and paint and do all that stuff. It's not like that went with my right arm. I'll just have to train my left hand, and that won't take long either. It'll probably take like a month or two, and then eventually I'll be able to do everything left-handed.
I don't know if you still want to like go on another topic or something, but I actually kind of had a question about the 3D stuff.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just wondering, like, since you kind of are more on the inside, what your insight is about how necessary it is for concept artists to know 3D.
It's pretty necessary, and I wouldn't want to try to scare you with that. It's easier. It's almost kind of bizarre if you don't try it at least a few times,
Mm-hmm.
But I usually encourage people to specialize. So if you're going to do 3D and you're going to do all these different tools, then at least try to like say you're a character artist, right? Or you're an environment artist, and you're using 3D just to do better environments or characters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like a focus.
Yeah, always stay focused. So when you learn new tools, have that larger focus. You understand me?
Mm-hmm.
Because then that will help you. Again, you'll just transcend the tools if you do that. If you kind of dodge and use 3D only for environments, but then you use 2D for characters, and you only use brush pens for vehicles, like it's kind of weird, and you're going to be kind of scatterbrained even when you're working. But if you like have laser focus, the amount of quality work you can get out is going to be extraordinary. And just to make a point, I have some like this character that I did after like a month or two of learning 3D Coat. I think it was like 2 months, or maybe 3 months in, I was into 3D Coat. Yeah, this was about a year ago. And I was able to make this. Do you see this?
Yeah.
And it's pretty impressive, right? And it's all completely 3D, and it's 3D printed, painted, and whatnot, what have you. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. And you can look at it like here, you can like rotate and look at it from all the different angles. It's pretty cool. And I'm actually thinking about getting back into it. And I'm trying to make a point that I already can kind of paint like soldiers or like sci-fi dudes well already. That's a thing that I can already do, you know? So all this is just a fabrication of me using a different tool to demonstrate that. That's all.
Yeah, there's a lot of already technique inset and like skills within you that like you're able to transfer it easily.
Yeah, the tools will take some time to adjust and to become better at. There's no doubt there. But that's not like the tool does not define if you're good or not, is my point. Okay. In fact, if anything, when you switch to a different tool, usually it reveals how terrible you are at something. Right? It'll reveal to you that you actually might have no sense of design or forms, right? And you're using too much, you're relying too much on a different tool to kind of do it for you. And so I highly encourage people to try different tools as a product of just kind of constantly being aware of their their weaknesses. And it doesn't hurt to spend like a week or two learning some new tool and then coming back to Photoshop or something that you feel more comfortable with and going back and forth. Like I have been consistently jumping back and forth out of ZBrush pretty much my whole career. And so I'm pretty well versed in ZBrush because of that reason and that reason alone. You know,
Okay.
there'd be times where I would spend like a whole month just really in ZBrush, but my focuses have always been an ability to be a good artist, not a good ZBrush sculptor. Makes sense? So
Yeah.
as I became a better artist and as I became more familiar with ZBrush, those kind of started connecting. You understand? And it started becoming easier and easier for me to use ZBrush as a design tool. It's true for like traditional painting. Like as I started doing more digital painting, and started understanding fundamental painting ideas, I can traditionally paint pretty well. Not terribly good, but like I can do pretty good, and it just feels familiar. It doesn't feel like I'm working with a tool that I've never touched before. Like it's like, oh, this makes sense. This is blocking in my shapes and lighting. There's just a few things I have to get used to, which is the ability to scale my brush at any moment, changing any values at any time. Like there's my like subtle things that I am reliant on my tool, but I can still achieve these things adapting to the other tool. That makes sense because I understand what I'm trying to achieve. I just need to kind of find the right brushes or the right kind of technique. And once I get that down, then I can probably paint traditionally just as good as I can digitally.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that'll take long. Like I have only spent probably less than 10 hours doing traditional paintings, but I was shocked because my first traditional paintings were garbage. And because I was garbage, right? I didn't know much. And then as I really developed artist, my traditional paintings are not bad at all. I was actually kind of shocked when I did some stuff with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing that I'm proud of I would put on Facebook, but something that I was like, I wasn't appalled. And I realized, hey, if I spent like a good month or so on this, I could be really good, you know?
Yeah.
But I had no interest.
Fundamental.
It's expensive. It's expensive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's cheaper to just do things in Photoshop. In fact, my one of my life drawing instructors who does everything traditionally, he told me that that's what he does. He does his painting first in Photoshop, and then he goes and gets the paints and stuff because he's a lot more prepared. So he saves himself a lot of money.
Oh wow, that's a process.
Yeah, it's clever. I was like, well, what a clever. And he's like the kind of guy that's like, yeah, you know, why? Of course, I'm gonna use freaking whatever tools necessary to make my life easier. He or there's a great quote that was not done from him, but from another traditional artist who was caught doing some sort of digital technique. Like they took a photo that they took, like they went to a beach and they took a photo of the beach and then they went home and then they took that photo and threw it into Photoshop and then did some like posterizing to it so they can kind of break apart the forms and the values so they can see it easier.
Hmm.
And people found this out and they were flipping out on this traditional artist. And then he wrote this amazing quote where he said, you know, man didn't invent the knife so that they can learn how to cut. It was the need to cut that man invented the knife. And basically the point of that quote, which I thought was freaking poetic, is that we didn't like create a knife and then say, okay, what can we do with this thing? It's because we needed to cut things. So we're like, how we need some sort of tool to do that. So we invented the knife. You get it?
Yeah.
And so he was trying to make a point of like, there's a reason why Photoshop exists. You understand? And why people use it. It's a useful tool. There's a reason why this is stuck around for so long and it's not going anywhere. Because there was a need for it. Okay?
Right.
And so you should always keep that in mind moving forward. Yeah, tools are great though. It's not I'm not one of those like elitists either. Like, oh you use Painter, you're a novice. Or you use 3D, pff, cheater. That's naive thinking. Yeah. Any other questions before I let you guys go?
Um, I definitely don't want to hog it, but if nobody else has any questions, I
Well,
have one
let's
more.
give it like a minute or two. This is late.
Yeah.
Or if everybody doesn't have a question, just write, no, I don't have one. So that way we can kind of just get a consensus. I guess nobody's typing. Looks like people are
I
writing
just have
other
a
stuff.
question about your blocking, because like the blocking way you're doing thumbnails. When you go
Oh,
about
go
that,
for it.
do you like pick out like I know you don't do lighting per se, but you pick out like your local value and local color when you're blocking in? Is it like some that you keep it in your mind while you're doing it? Like even when you were like starting this guy out,
Yeah, I don't think much at all.
you just do it and happy accidents happen.
It's not happy accidents either. No. Um, and I'll explain it elaborately why and what I mean by all this. Okay? And so, like, I didn't see this robot guy in my head, and I had just had an urge to draw him or paint him. Okay?
Yeah, for sure.
That just didn't happen. But the way that I parallel this, I talked about this before, and I'll bring it up again. It's like when you walk, you don't think about putting one foot in front of the other, and you don't think about running. You don't think about how fast you should do that, right, when you're running. Right, when you're catching a ball, you're not necessarily thinking about where your hands need to be, right? You just do it. And that's a product of practice. Because remember I told you that your brain is sometimes paying attention to things that you might not even be paying attention to? And those are examples of things that your brain has just kind of just paid attention to. You want to see some really cool stuff that your brain can do?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Your brain will even kind of convince you of certain things that are not true. And I love this example.
Oh, like the value change thing?
The lack of value change is what you mean.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like if you look at A and B, B is obviously lighter, right? But that's the illusion. It isn't,
It's crazy.
right? And it's because your brain, and it's even crazier, right? I turned it off and I proved to you that they're the same value, and your brain is like, that's cool, but B is still
But it
lighter.
doesn't believe it?
Yeah, your brain is still like, nah, but B is lighter. So you see how like there's a subconscious part of your brain that's kind of driving the conscious part of your brain. This is why you
Yeah.
have like extreme thinkers who believe in one thing even though they're entirely wrong, right? You can like show them evidence and yet they'll still deny it, right? It's called cognitive dissonance. It's where your worldview goes against the reality of the world. You understand? People fight harder when this happens. And it's easier to talk someone down from cognitive dissonance, and we all have it. Don't think that you're immune to it. Everybody has it. It's just at what degree do you have it in certain things, right? And you're easier to convince or talk down if a few things are true. For instance, one, if you don't have a strong bearing on it in the first place, right? Like if you're indifferent about, gun control, for instance, in America, like you're going to be easier to convince, you know, versus someone that like, let's say, bought 400 guns, you know, and responsibly use those guns and have never dealt with any kind of hardship with them, right? And then
Strap it
yeah, then people
strap
come at you.
driving forces.
Yeah, and then you've paid for gun laws and all. It's going to be harder for you to listen to the opposition, and vice versa. Like if you had someone that died from guns, and someone that has experienced some real trauma in your life from that, you're also going to be hard to talk to about these types of issues. You understand? And and that's one of the variables is like how much do you put into that? Um, and then the second thing that drives cognitive dissonance um, is really the amount. Like, so the first one was just like how much that is the amount. The second one, I had it in my mind, I just forgot it, and I know what it is. The second one is, oh yeah, the second one would be where you don't want to admit ignorance, Okay? For whatever reason, this happens, and people do this all the fucking time, right? Including myself, right? They don't want to admit that maybe they don't know, you know? And that doesn't have to do with the amount of knowledge they know. They're just like in the heat of an argument, and they throw out a they throw out an assertion, and then someone questions that assertion, and then they're just like, well, like, you don't know. Like, you should listen to me. Trust me on this, right? That kind of attitude, right? And so our brain, this is our brain at its worst, is what I'm trying to say, okay? When your brain is more reactive than it is proactive,
It's like
right?
it's like that question when like people ask you like, what do you put into a toaster, and people answer right away and they're like toast, but it's bread you put in a toaster.
Yeah,
'Cause
great.
Your brain is
That's
just like,
a
oh
great.
hey, I just
That's
want
a
to throw it
great.
out real quick.
Yeah, that's a great example. Yes, exactly. That's your brain at its worst in the modern society. Okay? Keep that in mind. Modern, because back in the day, it was kind of wise to be insecure about jumping into a branch that looked a little flimsy, to be a little insecure that maybe you're not as skilled as you might think you are, right? Second guessing. It was better to be insecure about these things, but insecurities now are unfortunate. Okay, especially for something like trying to improve yourself in art. Also, that cognitive dissonance. Like, imagine I brought this point up before, but imagine that there's a bush and it shakes, right? Like you're getting some water and it shakes. You can either do you think, well, what do you think's in there? Do you think it's a tiger or do you think it's the wind? And most people say tiger. And what's great about this example is it demonstrates that your primal brain is at its work. It's working. Because if it is a tiger, then you're good. You ran away from it. But if it's the wind, you're just a fool. It's no big deal. Okay? But let's say you have the opposite scenario where it blows and you can have the option, is it a tiger or the wind? But you say, more, 9 times out of 10, it's usually the wind, right? So I'm going to keep getting water. But what if that 1 time out of 10, it happens to be that tiger, you're dead, right? It's a really bad scenario. You understand? And so these types of things live in your brain, and they're kind of the worst parts of your social behavior and even your progressive behavior. Like if you want to get better at stuff, you'll fall into the trap of believing. And not a lot of you guys do this. I know most of you guys are more sensible, but most people think that art is like a talent, right? And it's not. You can earn it. You can totally like develop a skill in anything within reason. Okay, and that's a really good understanding. And if you can cognitively not dissonate that, right? Like if you can say, that makes sense, I can do that, then you'll achieve great success. And then once you realize, hey, the subconscious brain is driving a lot of the time because of primal reasons, right? Which I gave you great examples of why it's bad for us in a lot of cases, right? This is when it's good. It's when you put a lot of time and effort drawing and painting and designing and learning. Because eventually your brain's like, okay, this kid's not giving up on this. We got to just store this up in the subconscious and make his life or her life easier. Do you understand? Whether you're paying attention or not. So when you ask me, do I think about any of this? This is kind of like the long-winded answer to that. But I think it's important you understand the kind of the overarching psychology of it so you can have a stronger and more firm theory around why this is true. Okay? Now you can see, oh, well, AJ can do this stuff because AJ spent 10 years drawing robots and shit.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
more you just start. You're like, I want to just
I just
paint
want to
something
draw.
cool.
Yeah, it's like breathing for me now. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not an easy answer to give to a student, right? Oh, just paint for 10 years, dude. Just do it. You'll be fine. But it's the right answer, and it's the honest answer. And you just need to hear it, and you got to know it.
And
And
then
so
the
if you want
rest
to,
of like just any thought just comes out as you're doing it because you're just like, fuck it, like let's
yeah.
have fun.
So if I was to draw, let's say, a robot cat, I would have a much harder time. I would have to use reference.
Yeah.
Because I don't draw cats often. If you were to
But
ask
like
me to
this
do,
is what you love to do,
oh,
so
dude,
you're just
yeah,
gonna bang it
no
out.
brainer almost.
No
Yeah,
thought,
exactly.
just talk the whole time and just do something cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so like imagine if it's like you can walk and talk, right? You don't just walk and hold on, let's stop so I can talk to you for a second. okay, now let's keep walking. No, you can't. You can do both things. You know, it's the same thing. Like this is almost as similar to me as walking, right? But if I was like, I think last class I was doing like those more stylized artworks, and people were asking me questions, and I was like completely distracted. I couldn't answer the question because I was like so focused on the stylized stuff. You understand? Because I don't do that often,
Yeah.
and that's why it was more difficult for me. Right now I stopped painting because this is mostly painted, and I'm just like kind of just being a little more aggressive with my lecture. But yeah, I just wanted to make a very clear point too, you know?
Okay.
And so, okay, so I want to give you kind of a larger scale, or that was like a larger scale answer, and I want to give you kind of a shorter or smaller scale, okay? Which is the ways to get better at this is to just genuinely practice it often. And when you practice and study it, give yourself something to quantify it with. That's why I suggest using a timer. Because if you say, I'm going to try to do a robot sketch thingy in an hour, you can compare that to your results a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years from now. Understand?
Yeah.
You can like if you just aimlessly paint and draw without any sense of time or structure, then it's gonna like your growth is gonna feel blinding. Like it doesn't feel like you're ever getting better. But the reality is against you in that thinking. The reality is the more you draw and the more you do something, you are getting better. Remember, whether you're thinking about it or not, your brain is working. Okay. So, but if you want to consciously be aware of your growth, then you have to create certain staples of progress, which is like, I'm going to test myself for 1, maybe 2 hours of painting, no distractions, and see what I get out of it. And at the end of that, you can objectively look at where you're at, write down the things you might want to improve upon, study that for several months, and then come back and do another 1 hour painting, and then put those two together, compare your results. That's how scientists roll. It's not even something that I invented, by the way. It's the scientific method, okay? This is how scientists put robots on Mars. You get it? Because they look at substantial evidence and they compare all the time and they fail all the time and they do the math because people's lives sometimes are in tremendous danger because of this, you know? So if they make any kind of mistake, people could die. Especially when they were trying to put people on the moon. Okay? So the like I said, the shorthand answer for this would be, test yourself, quantify that often, so that way you can constantly kind of gauge your growth. I did that indirectly. What I did was I just had a blog and I just post all the time, and it was kind of cool because I would just look back a week and I would see like that I got better. You know, even if it was.
That's the cool thing about filling a sketchbook.
Yeah.
Like just like one day, just is like full, and then going through the whole sketchbook and just looking at each page and like, oh, cool,
absolutely.
yeah.
Like, and you're doing it indirectly too. Like I'm trying to say, start doing it directly. Like start actually
Yeah,
making
where
it
like
real.
actually pick it out. Okay.
Yeah, pay attention to it, because it's gonna take time to get to a level that you think you want to get to, that you see me do. Because it took me time. I didn't like go to the witch in the forest and sell like firstborn, and then now I have the ability to paint without thinking. You know, it's no. I started as I became a better teacher. I had to think more about what I was doing and how I was doing it. And once I started discovering that, I got even better and better exponentially, you know, because I was able to now focus in on the things that truly improve my artwork. And luckily for you guys, able to pass that information to you guys. But there's no there's no shortcut, unfortunately. But if there was a shortcut, then it'll have less value to our actual work, right? If there's like a really easy way to get really amazing, then everybody would just do it. And then becoming a good concept artist would be kind of easy, and there would be no real value to it. I wouldn't be able to charge like, as much money as I do if it was just something that they could just do on their own. Right?
Yeah.
So, it takes time and effort, and it's something that will build over time, so I wouldn't worry about it. Just be patient. And just keep practicing it. Try to do it for this class every week, like just after the class or maybe tomorrow. Do like a 1 hour sketch, and then just stop it there and just hold on to it, save that file, and then at the end of the class do another one, and then compare the two.
Okay.
Everyone can
And
do
then
that
take
too.
notes on like what I messed up and what I can
Absolutely.
work on and study that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And then you can practice that in the assignment, indirectly
Yeah.
or directly. So, yeah, hopefully that gives you some genuine advice overall.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, it's a long path, but remember I was talking to Ilya, right, about like the power of the industrial design industry, right? Because they make them draw a lot, right? And I said that's a good thing because when you make people do something a lot, they just get good at it. It's inevitable. Okay, that's why ArtStation or not ArtStation, Art Center works really well. It's really expensive though for people to force you to draw a lot. Okay, but that's what they do. They make people draw a lot, and that's why a lot of those kids got there like are freaking rock stars. But the problem with Art Center at some level is it's just super expensive, and a lot of the artists that come out of there draw the same because they follow like a very strict curriculum. And that's what happened with me too, because I had a very like color between the lines type of thing when I was teaching my first mentorships, and everybody painted just like me. And I don't mean that in a good way. I mean like it was like a secondhand version of my work, you know? And I was like, wait, this is no good. I need to teach my students to be their own artists because that's how they're going to truly get value out of their work and also how they're going to actually get jobs. You know? Meaningful jobs that are built around the merit of their own work and quality of their work, not because they can paint what people ask them to paint. Because that's going to be expected of you anyway. So might as well have some fun and make your own kind of work, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, like I said, just doing something a lot will just get you really good at it. I mean, most of you guys have already known that. And trust me, I'll keep reminding you guys because you guys will forget. It happens every class. There's always like one person's like, oh, I don't know what happened this week. I was like, did you study? Did you draw a lot? No. Oh, okay. That's what happened though. That's why you have struggled this week. Almost every single class. Emily, you've had like 2 classes with me, right? So you've seen it. It always happens. Oh, and I think even Emily had fallen into that trap. Like even herself, and she's taken this classes already a few times with me. Like, and she's like, "Oh, I had a hard time this week," and I'm like, "Did you study?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, what did you expect, right?" And I even warned her in that first class, and like I'm warning you guys in this class. It's just inevitable. So I find myself as a constant reminder to most of you guys. And then some of the few and the most of you guys, or the few or the ones that actually consider what I'm saying as a real determining factor in their growth, they will continue drawing more. Like, oh my gosh, AJ's right. I need to draw more. What am I thinking? And they do that. And then it's easier for me to give some criticism too, because then the kinds of questions and problems that students run into are more nuanced. And those are really great, like to snipe out. Okay, so, and that usually happens around the end of the class, like during the third and fourth week. I start focusing on nuanced problems that you guys run into. But usually in the beginning, it's more general, and I try to get you guys to focus. Like, okay, that's cool, but like get to work. Paint a lot. And then you guys are, well, how do I handle this specific problem? Oh, okay, there you go. That's a nuanced question. And it's focused on your specific problems, not necessarily a general or broad problem. Okay. So expect that to happen. Like I told you, most people know that if they just stop and think, you know, oh yeah, of course, if you just draw a line, it'll get really good. And just yet they don't do it, right? Or draw enough. They may draw like here and there, but they don't draw nearly as enough as they should. Or study the kinds of things that they know they need to do. Like people know that they do a lot of anatomy studies, but yet they don't do it. Like you guys know that, right? Like if you want to be a good character artist, you have to draw a lot of anatomy, right?
You gotta do
Just
life drawing studies and
yeah,
whatnot.
just gotta do a lot of it.
Looking at people in a coffee shop.
Yeah, you got it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was told like in 7 different occasions that I needed to work on my anatomy before I woke up to it. So it's not like I'm immune to this problem as well. Okay. Like I showed my portfolio and the 7th time they're like, yeah, you really got to work on your anatomy. And it's like, there might be something to this. And then I ended up buying 17 anatomy books, spent almost 2 years really focusing on anatomy as a strength, and I'm like, I see what they were getting at. I didn't know what the hell I was doing before. That's what they were trying to say, you know? And trust me, you guys don't need to take as much time to get to my level. Like, you see where I'm at now. Like, I think if you guys really stuck to your guns, it would take you about 3 years to get to my level of artistry. I really believe that. And the reason why that's true is because you have access to information and knowledge that I didn't have access to, right? And plus, I'm teaching you guys the things that I know, right? So allowing you to stand on my shoulders instead of live in my shadow. And also, there's new technology that I didn't have access to. There's new processes and techniques and games and movies that I didn't see or hear or watch, or, you know what I mean? So you guys when you guys hit your 10-year mark, you should be a different kind of artist that I would have never dreamed of becoming. Okay? But unfortunately for you guys, I'm still young. So once you guys become epic, I'm going to learn from you. And then I'm going to chase you guys, and then I'm going to start becoming better again. And it's just going to be a great piggyback ride, you know, until we're all old and senile, living on Mars, laughing about the times where concept art was a thing. Right? Living in our robot bodies. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you guys for the great questions. If you have more questions, don't worry, that we have more time to do Q&As, so it's no big deal. And so with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and you guys have a great weekend. Be sure to hang out with each other inside the Skype chat or even also in the Discord. You know, take advantage of the Google Hangouts and, you know, technology that exists for people to be able to communicate with one another. Community is a huge part of this industry, so you take advantage of it. You guys have this opportunity to be friends with one another in an earnest way, not for any kind of monetary gain, just for the sake of, hey, we want to be concept artists. And the Discord is full of people like that, so use it, really. Just talk to people, chat. With that being said, I'm going to peace out. Laters, guys. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to watch more in the future. If you liked the video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, you can go to my website, robotpencil.net, where you can find mentorships, tutorials, and a Patreon to get more exclusive content. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in my next videos.